State lawmakers appeared on the verge of raising Hawaii's minimum wage last year, but failed at the last minute. Now they're trying again with a reworked bill that critics say falls far short of a so-called living wage to offset the high cost of living in the islands. What should the minimum wage be? How will whatever does pass affect small business owners who will also struggle to make ends meet? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaiʻi start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi. I'm Daryl Huff. Democratic state lawmakers and the governor started the year unified around a plan to gradually raise Hawaii's minimum wage to $13 per hour by 2024. The bill is moving along and is tied to tax provisions to help low-wage earners. The Chamber of Commerce, which usually opposes minimum wage, calls this year's plan reasonable. Critics say $13 an hour is not enough to survive in Hawaii. Tonight's guests include a state lawmaker, the head of a business group, and advocates for higher wages. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guests. Nicole Wu is a senior policy analyst for the Hawaii Appleseed Center, which pushes to change systems that perpetuate inequality. Sherry Minora McNamara is the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, which is itself called the voice of business. Representative Della Al-Baladi is the House Democratic Majority Leader representing District 24, which includes Makiki, Papakolea, Macaulay, and Manoa, and Israel Kahlo, a utility worker at the Daniel K. International Airport. And Israel, let me start with you.
Yes.
How much do you make, roughly, over there at the airport?
A little bit higher than minimum wage, the 10.10.
Oh, okay, so $13 an hour would be a raise for you.
$13 is not even enough for a minimum wage like me, because $13 is not enough for living here in Hawaii.
How do you get by?
That's why the $13 is not enough to buy, especially if you pay for your medical. There's a lot of expenses for as a medical if you are sick. So the minimum wage is $13 is not enough.
And then how do you afford to live? What do you do? I guess you have family with you.
Yes, I have a family with me. So the $13 is I need to budget so that it will be enough. But as I said, it's not enough, the $13.
Okay. Majority Leader Della Al-Baladi, what is the status of this proposal now? Is it a complete done deal? It's going to be this? What do you think?
The House will be taking up House Bill 2541 for third reading, and then we'll pass it over to the Senate. And I think they'll also have a hearing. And we hope that this will move through. But it is still part of, in the legislative process.
How do you answer those who were saying that, there was a lot of testimony saying that $13 is not enough, and even so, it's 4 years out from here.
So what I would say to those folks about the $13 minimum wage is that it is one of the things that we're looking at to help working families in the state of Hawaii. That bill, in fact, also includes this increase to the minimum wage and huge tax relief to working families and individuals. So also in the bill is tax credits in the earned income tax credit and the food excise tax credit that equate to over $75 million annually. We are making the earned income tax credit refundable and permanent. So this is the first time really in a long time where real money is being put back into the pockets of working families and individuals. Now that's one piece. But to answer the question about affordability and why $13 isn't enough, I would say to folks, yes, $13 isn't enough. The real living wage in this state for a family of four, let's think about this, is $34 an hour. But what small business is going to pay $34 an hour? What we really need to talk about, and this is what's really exciting about this package, it's not just about minimum wage. It's not just about tax credits. We, as the majority, have taken it on as our collective kuleana, our responsibility to address all of the cost drivers. So it's income, it's tax burdens, it's access to early learning and 21st century schools, and it's affordable housing.
We're going to go into most of those other things later on, because I think that this discussion really is about the condition of low-income folks. And Nicole Wu from Appleseed, what's the What's your response to this sort of Rube Goldberg setup of multiple different inputs to help the lower income people?
We're really pleased to know that the Chamber of Commerce agrees that the minimum wage should go up, and that the House and the Senate are looking at all these different ways to help working families, because they really do need relief. We have a housing affordability crisis, homelessness, and we have people moving away. We've looked at the earned income tax credit, and that is something that we are so happy about, making it refundable. That means that people who don't owe a lot in income taxes can get a tax refund back if their tax credit's worth more. So a single mom with one kid here in Hawaii making minimum wage, right now that's only $21,000 a year for full-time workers. She'll get back about $200 from this bill. That's great, right? We know a woman like that needs the $200. But if you have two parents working minimum wage with two kids, they're not going to get anything from the EITC part of the bill, and so they really need to get a boost in their wages.
Let me get back to you on that a little bit, but let me give Sherry McNamara an opportunity to talk. Is $13 an hour going to be a hardship for some businesses too?
Yeah, if I may say, we're in support of this bill because we believe at the Chamber we need to be part of the collective effort in addressing the cost of living issues, and that's why we support the package in its entirety. We took that position knowing that many of our local and small businesses will be impacted because their employees are their families as well. When you look at the cost of doing business, there's many factors tied to the minimum wage. For example, payroll taxes, TDI, work comp, unemployment insurance, prepaid health care. They're all factors that's tied to the minimum wage. And so collectively, we're looking at a much more increase than simply just a dollar increase. For example, prepaid health care, that adds another $3 per hour into the wages. And so we have to ask ourselves, can these small and locally owned companies really afford a drastic a jump in the minimum wage? Even UHERO stated that we need to be thoughtful and take a more gradual, incremental approach to it.
UHERO is the economist from the University of Hawaii.
Correct. Because ultimately, business will need to increase the cost of goods and services. And if they do that, then it will increase the cost of goods and services for the consumers. Or they may have to cut benefits, reduce hours, so that those who are getting prepaid health care, that's working 20 or more hours, will not be able to get the health care. They may have to cut fringe benefits. And that's the reality of the situation. There's other businesses that do pay well above minimum wage, but there's some that simply cannot, and every increase will have an impact. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all, and that's why we support the package, because it looks at the different pillars of what's driving up the cost of living.
Let me ask
housing
Israel Kahlo, when you hear all of what they're saying, and they're saying, okay, along with the minimum wage increase, they're going to give you a tax break at the end of the year. But $200, does that sound like a lot of money?
I don't think so. Because the $200 is, you cannot buy nothing. So the $200 is not enough.
On that point, though, when it comes to expecting people are going to fill out their tax form, I mean, how effective is that in terms of actually getting money into people's pockets?
The earned income tax credit actually exists at the federal level, and it is a pretty effective program. Republicans and Democrats like it. It helps reduce poverty. But you're right, people have to wait until tax time and they have to file a tax return. So that's why we agree with the House leadership that it's a combination of minimum wage and tax credits. And we support the intent. It's just, we'd like to see a boost higher, and we're halfway through ledge session. We can.
Is there room for hope?
Well, I just want to make one correction, because $200 was put on the table, and I think that's actually inaccurate. When you look at the tax relief altogether, and these are the calculations we've done, with the federal earned income tax credit, An individual worker plus one child can actually get over $3,500 back with the federal EITC and with the state EITC. We also are adding the food excise tax credit, and in that family of a single mother and a child, that would be $150 each. So they're actually getting $300. So it's not simply $200 in addition. There's actually, when you look at these different ranges in households, they're getting substantial amounts of money back in tax relief. And I think one of the things that the state has done, one of the things that the legislature has done, has encouraged individuals to make sure that they're filing their taxes so they can draw down all of these benefits, because this is a significant amount of both federal and state tax relief that people are not taking advantage of. The programs are out there and we want people to do that. I would also add that one of the things that we're seeing is that when you set up this kind of policy, you're also encouraging people to end up saving, right? When you get that $4,000 check back because of the combined federal and state earned income tax credit, you know, it's good. It's going to be able to, you can do something really good with that, but you could also save it. So we also want to get individuals into the habit of saving. So I really think that this approach is something that advocates have stepped up on board and have asked us to do in the past. And I think that's one of the things that we're accomplishing.
We absolutely have, but I just want to say that the numbers that she's talking about with the tax credits are the totals that families can get, but that's not what this bill does. I was just talking about the difference between the current EITC and what people could get with the new language. So that's why my numbers are lower than hers.
You're including the federal.
I'm including the federal, but also the tax package includes not just the EITC, but the food excise tax credit. So that's like for families, for families of say 2 workers and 2 children, that's going to be a value of $600. $900.
Yeah, but they already get some, so it's not the full amount. So it's just a difference between current or their total amount.
Okay, I want to respect our viewers because we've already gotten a number of calls. Most of them, I have to say, are critical of a $13 minimum wage and wanting more. $13 is not enough. Government and business leaders are acting like they're doing something. It's political theater. Every study done shows that poor people spend all their income just for basics, no savings. So how does legislature think $13 an hour is the right balance between survival for workers and business interests? And it goes, there's a number of them that are like that. So, I mean, I'll give you a chance to answer this political theater question. I think that there was some criticism at the beginning that there was some kind of conversation that took place before the legislature to end up with the governor, the House, and the Senate agreeing on this package. Was the chamber involved in conversations prior to the session over this package?
Different stakeholders were involved. For us, we've always advocated a more holistic, comprehensive approach in previous sessions, and to ensure that we're not affecting businesses as well. And so we've been consistent with our input, so it's something new. And so when we saw the version of the bill come out, we took a look at it and we felt that, okay, this is a more reasonable approach. And again, we need to be part of the collective effort to address the cost of living issues.
Nicole, was Appleseed, were you folks involved in the process in advance of the legislature?
There were some meetings that we were in, and we advocated for the earned income tax credit and the minimum wage and all the different things that can help working families.
So Della Bellotti, there was some criticism, I think, from Common Cause and so on about it seems great to walk into the beginning of a legislature with a deal because there was other issues that were part of it, but also it does reduce the amount of time public can have input.
So let me clear the air on this. You know, we work during the interim. We work all year long. We're always constantly talking to stakeholders. What I'm especially excited about the process that we've engaged in this year was that there was very deliberate effort and lots of groups were reached out to, and we talked about affordable housing, access to early learning. We talked about the minimum wage and tax credits. So let me tell you, my November and December was extremely busy at the Capitol, and I'm really proud of the fact that we had a lot of conversations. To the fact that the deal is done, I think all you need to do is look at the legislative process and seeing that there is an open process. We want people to come down and testify. So there are still conversations going on, and it's very open, in my opinion. I think we want people to come down. We continue to have conversations. We're continuing to engage community stakeholders. And there's another important thing going on here. The community itself is having conversations with and without legislators. And that's really super important. I think a lot of this has also been motivated by the change initiative that PBS has been a part of, where you have executive community leaders, nonprofit community leaders talking about what are the things that are really important to the community. So we have to keep having this level of dialogue. I appreciate Common Cause saying it's a done deal. It certainly doesn't feel like it's a done deal from my part, from the amount of work that is being done at the legislature right now.
Okay, let me throw out another question. What's the impact, and I think Sherry and Nicole both can answer this question, when you do raise the minimum wage, because I think that we have it doesn't affect all the workers, it only affects the ones that are under $13 an hour, but what's the impact on the rest of the other people's wages?
Wage compression. So exactly, Darryl, what you said. So as we move up the minimum wage, then it narrows the gap between the skilled workers, the ones that's been with the company or business, and narrows the gap. So one, what does it do to the morale of the other employees who's been with the company versus maybe one who just joined the company at the entry-level wage? And so this will likely or sometimes will force businesses to increase all the other wages at 10, let's say this is a 10% increase in 1 year. So then we have to increase it 10% of the wages across the board. That is a lot of dollars we're talking about, and one that simply small businesses will likely have a hard time managing and handling. Is again, it's tied to so many other taxes and benefits, and so it's just not simply raising the wage. We have to think about what other cost drivers there are when increasing the minimum wage.
Nicole, do you agree that that's what tends to happen? Or I know you folks have had some data on that.
Yeah, certainly the workers who make a few dollars a little above the minimum wage, like Israel here, will probably see an increase. And there will be a little bit less of a difference when you go further up the scale. But wages are not a zero-sum game. All of your workers are also customers. Israel buys stuff at the store. He wants to take his family out for dinner, or maybe for a birthday or something, buy clothes for his new granddaughter, grandson. So that's one thing to remember. The minimum wage has been studied almost more than any other topic in economics in the last couple decades. And it shows that these low-wage workers, like one of the questions said, they spend their money as soon as they get it. It goes into the economy. It makes it so that customers can afford to buy more stuff at our local businesses. So especially in districts with a lot of low-wage workers, those businesses are going to feel positive effects because they're going to have people who can afford to buy their stuff.
Are you able to save money?
No, I cannot even save nothing because as in my family, my 2 sons live with me and I have 1 grandson now. Although they are working, my 2 sons, but they still not enough wage for themselves. So since I came to Hawaii, I live for a minimum wage until today. So it's very hard for me to survive here in Hawaii because the cost of living here in Hawaii is one of, they state that one of the most high expenses here in Hawaii. So the $13 I think is not enough.
What do you do when you want to have a big occasion, like if there's a birthday party or something that costs money, how do you do it?
I not even go because I don't have nothing to give, because, if you go to a party or you're gonna give somebody who has a birthday, you are ashamed to buy small stuff or cheap kind because mostly people are looking for the one you're gonna give, so.
Yeah, go ahead, Sherry, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the fact that, they put the money back into the economy. That may be true in the immediate term. However, the Congressional Budget Office mentioned that in the long term, it will cause long-term detriment to the economy, and by 2025, these negative long-term effects, would cause a slight decrease in family income. You hear it described it as a regressive, as minimum wage as regressive. And so, while the immediate term, yes, it will have a long-term impact. And as the cost of doing business increases, then so will the cost of goods and services will increase. And so while they may get an increase in minimum wage, they're paying higher.
The cost of living goes up.
Exactly.
Let me ask you, Dilla Baladi, Is there a consideration on the point of the cost of doing business? Is there a consideration to give a tax credit or cut to employers who have to provide the new minimum wage?
So in the proposals last year, those were some of the conversations we were having because we were struggling with how do you support those businesses in particular that are smaller businesses that cannot really afford because their profit margins are so thin. But we found that it was a very complicated process, and so we didn't go down that route. You know, the other thing that I would say is that in other places where you have these kinds of different, you know, you might have higher minimum wages, there are often large carve-outs, right, for businesses that make over a certain amount of money. Here in this state, our minimum wage is applied to everybody across the board. And so when people don't want to concede on those carve-outs, then we're left with what we have. And so then we choose the other levers that we can pull, which are the tax credits.
Let me ask to explain what a carve-out is. You're talking about like if someone has a tip job, right? Or something like that, where this person is not going to get the minimum wage, this group is not going to get it, that sort of thing. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, and then I would also say, you know, we always get criticized, well, there's X number of states that have higher minimum wages than $13. Many of those higher minimum wages provide large carve-outs for businesses that are making under a certain amount or over a certain amount. And so that way you can actually demand a higher minimum wage from a bigger business that can afford it versus a smaller business that cannot. And we know here in the state of Hawaii that small businesses, you know, the Manapua shop or the the flower nursery, you know, on an island that's really developing, that really just has minimum wage workers. Their profit margins are so thin that they can't do this, and they're going to resort to cutting jobs or cutting hours, and so that's the kind of thing that we're balancing in the legislative process.
You know,
well, in most of those other states, the carve-outs do phase out after a few years, and also in the economic research, it shows that wages, the number of jobs don't drop in a significant way. And in Hawaii, we had the minimum wage go up from 2015 to 2018. Our unemployment rate dropped by half. The number of restaurant server jobs, for example, went up by a third. So, you know, even the last time that we raised the wage from $7.25 to $10.10, our economy did really well. And in these other states that are the next 8 most expensive states in the country after Hawaii, they've all raised their wages. It's going to be above $13 in 2024. They've all passed laws to go past 15, and they all have an earned income tax credit that's worth more than the one that's proposed in this bill. So we're just playing catch up with the other states. And if people are moving away, that's part of the why. They're not making enough money to stay here.
So one very big difference between Hawaii and some of those states also is Hawaii is the only state where we have prepaid healthcare, employer-based healthcare for any business. Any business that has 1 employee or 200 employees that has to pay for healthcare benefits for their workers. Right. And so that's a huge difference. And I think that's something to consider. You know, I really appreciate that Israel is here, right? But, you know, one of the great things about that Prepaid Healthcare Act is that our labor unions rely upon that to make sure, and they use that as an argument for why they also need to have really good collectively bargained healthcare benefits, right? So I think we have to really look at ourselves differently in Hawaii from those other states. And I think what we've done is we've struck a real balance with both this bill that we're passing and at some point if we can talk about the early learning bills, affordable housing bills that are part of this package, because again, it's our collective kuleana to address all of the cost drivers in the state of Hawaii for all of our Alice families, which is 1 in 2 families in the state of Hawaii.
And if I may add to that, you know, we're an island state, so there's other factors that are unique to Hawaii compared to the other states that were mentioned. 98% of our goods get shipped in. Again, prepaid healthcare adds another $3 per hour to the wage. You know, I think we need to look at it. You can't compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges, and they're contiguous states. So someone who's not getting paid enough can always move to another state. We don't have that.
Well, I do have one question here. Do you think people are leaving Hawaii because of the low minimum wage? Do we know? Do you have friends who've left Hawaii because they can't make enough
yes,
money?
there's a lot of local here in Hawaii that they move in other state because they don't survive here in Hawaii because of the cost of living is very high.
And then let me explore with Nicole Wu a little bit more from Appleseed. This concept of the prepaid healthcare adding $3 an hour to the value. Do you buy that number? And is it really that significant a difference, especially now that most of us are paying more for our health care individually than we used to be paying?
Health insurance premiums are very expensive, so I accept that number. But we also hear when we talk to people that their bosses are keeping them at 19 hours a week so that these employers are not paying for health insurance. And when you look at the numbers, we do have lower numbers of low-wage workers getting health insurance than high-wage workers, for example. So they're already doing that. But again, in the economic research, when they've looked at what happens when increases happen to the minimum wage, not only is there almost no loss of jobs, but also they don't see that fringe benefits are taken away. And that seems to be because employers need to compete for good workers, right? They don't want to have a lot of turnover. They need to compete with each other. So if they know if they're going to cut their health insurance, they're going to lose their good workers. So, we would hate to see people lose their health insurance, but the evidence is showing that the minimum wage is not going to cause that.
Well, if the economy might have done well even with the minimum wage increase, but we don't think correlation equates causation, meaning there's many other factors that could have contributed to that. Let's take the restaurant industry. There's been a surge of opening of restaurants. That could have increased positions. There's so many other factors, and knowing that the economy is going to take an economic downturn. So what happens, what are we seeing with coronavirus? How is that going to impact the economy in the near future? And businesses have to prepare for that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Businesses, there's reasons as to why businesses have to reduce hours, right? Because the cost of doing business here is so high. So it's not simply because they cut hours because they don't want to pay prepaid health care, because a healthy workforce is good for an employer and good for the economy.
Is there stuff in the package that would decrease the cost of doing business in Hawaii?
Decrease the cost. Well, I think we're really focused on individual families and workers. So we're looking at the cost drivers for that section. And so it's really focusing on access to early learning and affordable housing. Now, the business community has come forward and helped us because they know that if we can help lower those costs, then they can attract workers here. In response to the question, is it just minimum wage that's driving workers away? No, people are going to places where there is more affordable housing, where there is better prospects for jobs. One of the things that we're hearing is that we have a teacher shortage, we have a healthcare workforce shortage, right? What are those high-paying jobs, those living wage jobs? Those are real living wage jobs. What are they looking for when they're coming here? Affordable housing. But when even affordable housing is out of the reach of middle-class people, we struggle. So what I'm very excited about is that our affordable housing package is looking at increasing affordable housing across a range. It's not just focused on affordable rentals and 80% under AMI. It's really looking at affordable housing, again, for 1 in 2 families in this state.
Let me ask, so Israel, how you have a house? You own a house or you rent a house? How do you get by?
I have a house, but as I said, it's really hard to pay for the mortgage because I have a family live with me and they don't have enough income.
Do they all have to pitch in for the house?
Sometimes no.
It depends.
It depends because sometimes they don't have any job, sometimes they have only part-time, sometimes they don't have nothing. So
how many people altogether live in the house?
Oh, I have 2 sons plus my grandson, me and my wife, and I have 1 sister and my brother-in-law.
So that's really how you get by with housing, right? Or are you paying for the whole thing?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
On not even $13 an hour?
That's why I said that the $13 is, I don't know how I'm going to afford.
So it just goes away, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Talk a little bit more about what are the affordable houses. Are you guys impressed with the affordable housing proposals too? Do you feel, because you guys have also been Appleseed been very active on affordable housing. Are you seeing hope, a corner turning on affordable housing with what's on the table?
We are so pleased that the legislature is focusing on working families. I mean, I don't want to say that we're against these bills. We support the intent of these bills, but there's room for improvement. And the housing bill has seen some pretty big changes in the session already, and it's definitely moving in a very good direction. So we're really just hoping for similar, compromises and discussion on this bill that has the wages and the taxes in
Does
it.
pretty much everything have to pass for all of this to work?
In my view, if we're really going to talk about tackling the high cost drivers, it's not just income and tax burdens. It is about affordable housing and early learning and access to early learning. So for me, yes, all of these have to pass if we really want to be successful in the end.
How does the affordable housing package work? I know that in the Senate, they actually boosted up, or they changed the bill. Is that one of the areas where you're a little bit less confident about working things out?
So I really don't know what's in the contents of the bill at the moment. I know that there's still some changes that are going to be made, and so I'm looking forward to what the Senate will pass over.
Can you just give me a plain English explanation of what the agreed to bill was? How would it?
So what we
help?
really wanted to do was invest in the infrastructure for affordable housing development around kind of the transportation corridors. That is actually a huge piece of it. We also were looking at a leasehold model where state lands would be leased to in the affordable housing market. So those are the kind of two big pillars, and then some regulatory relief as well. So all of those things are still kind of in conversation, and we're looking forward to the Senate bill coming over.
Okay, Sherry McNamara, what do you folks think? Have you been looking at all at the housing component, or do you feel like that's something that you could support too?
We're looking at all the components, and that's how we support overall the comprehensive package. Because again, as Representative mentioned, it addresses all the pillars of the cost of living in Hawaii, and that's why we wanted to again be part of that collective effort to support the minimum wage increase, as well as affordable housing bills and early learning.
From a business point of view, the proposals that have been made for housing, when you talk about infrastructure, it means getting the water and the sewer and the roads and so on there so that it can make it less expensive for someone to actually build there. Leasehold takes the land cost out. Do those make sense from a business point of view? Do you think that will actually attract investment into that sector?
We're at a crossroads in our state, and so we need to seek solutions that are new, and that's why we appreciate that the legislature and the administration came together and endorsed these bills, because we need to work together. We need to find solutions together because we are in it together. We want our communities to thrive, and so that's why we support all of the bills. And it's not taking it one pillar at a time. I mean, one issue at a time. It's taking it as a whole.
Let me ask you, when you hear this talk, you hear business and legislature and supporters of equality all agree. Does that give you some hope, or do you feel like they're just that? I mean, just as a person, does this make you encourage you?
No, because in my own opinion and in my own experience, since I came to Hawaii, I worked 3 jobs because I have small babies before. I have 3 kids before to support. So I need to work 3 jobs. And today I'm supposed to work 2 jobs, but I'm old already. I cannot work anymore longer.
Tired.
Yeah, I'm tired already because since I came to Hawaii, almost 32 years I live here in Hawaii. I always working hard, and the minimum wage I always get. That's why the healthcare is another burden for me, because as of now, what I'm receiving is, if I go to the doctor, then my paycheck is nothing left. So just like I living with paycheck to paycheck right now.
So you have to pay a lot when you go to the doctor, even though you have insurance?
Of course, yeah, yes, sir. Because you need to pay for your medicine, you pay for your doctor, you pay for your laboratories, and there are other things that you're gonna pay. So,
Nicole, on the issue of the early learning that they were talking about, how much of a dent do you suppose that will put in a lot of families' needs?
Oh, we have some of the highest pre-K costs in the country. I think the last time I looked, I'm not an expert on this, but I looked and it's more than the cost of UH tuition to have a kid, an infant in childcare. So for the families that don't currently have pre-K, this will be a big difference for them. So it is one slice of the pie. And I totally agree, there's a lot of different things that need to be done. And we're glad that the legislature and the governor and the Chamber of Commerce are all coming together. But the discussion needs to continue to make these bills as good as they can be.
You know, in reading these calls coming in, and I don't think this is orchestrated, I think this is genuine. There's a lot of disappointment with this package and these cards. It's like, this package fails working families. Our struggle to make ends meet will continue until we move away. If you can only stay open on the backs of your workers, you don't deserve to be in the business. Getting more money back on your taxes through credit sounds great, but don't you have to declare your refund next year? Perhaps end up paying more taxes the following year. That's a little technical, but why don't we let the people decide by voting on what the minimum wage should be? You know, I'm just sensing a lot of, you know, cynicism. Do you get that sense yourself out there?
You know, I think I can understand that cynicism because it is hard to live here in the state of Hawaii. You know, my daughter goes to public school. We see the family struggling. My own family saved for over a decade just to afford a little air cube in the sky in Makiki. So I understand and I feel very much for all of our residents. And so I think that's why we are really trying hard. You know, it was a wake-up call for me 1 week before opening session. My daughter, who's a 9th grader, looked at me and said, "Mom, you know my friends and I aren't coming back." And so we all feel the pain of what's happening. And that's why, you know, I want to work through this cynicism. I want to work through the fact that we have these huge problems and we can only do it together. I mean, I think if people keep beating up on each other, that's not going to be an effective way that we figure out the solutions.
When you say not coming back, what are you talking about? My
daughter's saying that I'm going to go away to college, Mom, and I'm not going to come back. I think we all face that in our families. And so we need to change that. I refuse to continue to be cynical. We have to keep working. And if people want to judge us at the end of session and want to judge us in a year, you know, to see what are the effects of some of these things, then so be it. But I think we have to keep working at it.
You know, it's interesting because you're an attorney along with being a legislator. My family is certainly middle class at the very least. I hear the same thing from my kids. What in all that what we're talking about is going to help the middle class families? We're talking a lot about families that are at the minimum wage, but what about middle class families as well? I mean, Nicole, is there a trickle up effect or anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's the pre-K definitely helps families up the income scale. The affordable housing is actually going pretty high up the income scale. And the earned income tax credit actually is a pretty complicated tax, but that's because it goes pretty high up. As you get towards the middle class, it becomes a smaller tax credit, but it actually does move up kind of through working class families up towards the middle class. So all of these policies can be adjusted in a way to kind of give help where it's needed and target it where it's needed.
Sherry McNamara from the Chamber of Commerce, what do you think is the thing that would be best, have the most effect on middle income people, people who are looking at this brain drain and they're able to send their kids to college, but the kids are saying, I'm not coming back?
That's why it's important that we invest in our education and workforce development initiatives. And the Chamber is definitely invested in this area.
What does that mean, workforce development issues? What is it?
In preparing our future workforce for the jobs of tomorrow. And so we need to really start looking at creating that kind of environment. What does it take to create a quality job that is high paying and keeping our keiki here at home? And so we've been working with various stakeholders, including the university, high schools, as well as government, to work on that talent pipeline, because we need to look at this as a long term and start thinking long term in the future. Okay, what can we do to keep, again, our keiki here in Hawaii? So, you know, education workforce development is an area that we should all be invested in.
Daryl, can I make that in a concrete example? There's a partnership right now between Hawaii Pacific Health and Waipahu High School with the help of the Chamber to help place students in medical assistant programs. So a senior coming out of Waipahu High School with a certification as a medical assistant will be making $21 an hour. as a senior out of high school. Now that senior maybe will take this medical assistant job, will go to a community college, will get help from the Early College Promise program, will then get help and assistance from SNAP benefits as if they're a low income member of the community. Then they'll be able to get a higher paying job. Maybe they'll be attracted to therapy or a nursing program. And guess what? Those jobs make $50 an hour. Those are the living wage jobs we need to be moving people into. And that comes out of a partnership between the chamber, between our medical community, and between our university and our high schools. We really need to focus on living wage jobs and not just on the minimum wage. We have to focus on all of these things. And then that worker, if they have access to early learning, affordable early learning and affordable housing, they're more likely to stay here. And guess what? That's going to address our workforce shortage. And so all of these things, it's going to take us committing over time to doing all of these things.
And I certainly agree and applaud the Chamber for supporting these initiatives, but workers like Israel are how the airport functions, right? We need people doing the utility work that he does there. We need baggage handlers. We need office cleaners, right? And they deserve to be paid a wage that's a livable wage as well. I mean, we can't function without the workers who might not have as high of an education as the rest of us. So
what strikes me too is that, excuse me, you work for yours is a union job. You've negotiated these things, and it's still less than $16, $17 an hour. Mm-hmm. So I mean, what is that? That would force up the cost of the airport, right?
If I may speak for the small businesses, because we are 80% small businesses, we hear, if business can't afford to pay this certain wage, then they shouldn't be in business. And again, many businesses already pay way above the minimum wage. We have to ask ourselves, okay, so if we do that and we say that businesses cannot, if they can't afford, then why don't they not exist? But do we really want to change the landscape of our small and local businesses, the Manapua shop, the drive-ins, the local Made in Hawaii stores? So you have to really ask ourselves, do we want to have more mainland companies coming in and then taking over the landscape, or keeping the family-owned businesses here in Hawaii? So just wanted to
It's an interesting question that also comes along those lines from a viewer. The minimum wage should be increased, small businesses need to be taxed less, and big businesses need to be taxed more. Was there, other than the tax relief, has there been consideration for, say, taking the excise tax off of certain categories of business, like drugs, like doctor visits, like food?
There are always those proposals in the legislature, and we're even probably considering some of them now. But what's really difficult about that is that when you start to carve out things from the general excise tax, everyone wants their thing carved out. Right. And what's really powerful about the general excise tax is that it's a broad-based tax. And then we can provide relief to workers in a targeted way through things like the earned income tax credit. And so we really found that those kinds of proposals are difficult to implement. Also, in terms of our the food, the excise tax on food, much of that is exported to the tourists who come.
Tourists pay a lot of it.
So it's really a difficult tax to tamper with.
Did you folks, were you disappointed at all that we're not seeing significant tax relief for business in this session?
Well, again, what we're adjusting right now is the cost of living, and taking the incremental approach to the minimum wage rather than a big jump definitely will help businesses, especially the small ones. So we appreciate that. And I think we have to continue a discussion. What are different ways that we can ensure that businesses can continue to keep their doors open? And so we are encouraged by more discussions, more collective discussions in bringing the different stakeholders together to find solutions together, because that's what we need.
It's a fascinating question from a viewer here, and it's how many people on the panel would be able to afford living on a $21,000 a year or even $30,000 a year? I know one.
That's because there's 7 or 8 people in this house. Yeah.
But I mean, really, tell me what goes through your mind if someone's told you, start with you, Nicole, I'll just work across the table, told you 30,000, that's it.
Right, 30,000 is $15 an hour for full-time work. And no, I wouldn't be able to make it. I would survive, but I would have to move out of my apartment and completely change everything about my lifestyle, and I would suffer. And I don't even have children. I can't imagine how single parents are making it in this state at the minimum wage or even at $15 an hour.
So legislators make how much a year? 50-something, right?
50,000.
Yeah, for working, I mean, I know you work practically full-time at both your jobs, I'll give you that credit, but I mean, when legislators are making $50,000 for a 4 or 5 month legislative session, how can they relate to this kind of a number?
So I relate to that question when I look back on my life, and when I look back when I started off out of college as a young teacher, and I was making a $30,000 or less salary, and I lived in a 1-studio apartment, and I struggled to get by, and figured out what we needed to do, relied upon family. And I think that experience really colors what I know a lot of people are experiencing. And so when I look at the breaks that we can give, if I could make affordable housing more reachable for individuals like that young teacher, for me 20 years ago, that's what I'm working towards.
But we also know that teachers in this state are not making enough money. I mean, they need affordable housing, but when you look at all the comparisons, they're not making it anything close to other teachers when you look at our cost of living. So affordability has 2 parts. Just always remember, it's the prices and the wages. You got to get them in balance. So for this show, we're focusing on the wages side, right?
Sure, I mean, to be fair, I would throw everybody out that question. I mean, when you think about living off $30,000 a year, what goes through your mind?
Oh, similar responses. And again, that's why we need to look at different opportunities and solutions, including training. American Job Center in Hawaii, they offer training services. So there's different ways of retooling or gaining more skills so that you can look for the higher paying jobs. But I think we all agree that it is challenging to live in Hawaii and the cost of living is high. So we need to continue the discussion to find different solutions in creative ways.
For a while there was sort of a movement or a discussion about a $17 minimum wage. And this caller writes, with state research once again confirming the benefits of genuine living wage, why are legislators still ignoring the data and sticking to misinformation provided by the Chamber of Commerce, a completely biased organization? Please respond to this caller's question about maybe fear or power of business making it so you don't do the right thing. That's the caller saying this.
Okay, I want to address the first part of the question, which says that DBED as a state agency tells us that $17 is the right number. I will say that in the testimony that we received on this bill, Department of Human Services that works with low-income families told us be cautious. And so one of the scenarios we ran was looking at when we increase the wages to $15, $17 an hour. And so the reason why they say be cautious is because a lot of these low-income earners are also dependent upon things like SNAP benefit, TANF, access to public housing. And so all of these other benefits, they may start to actually hit a threshold where they're going to fall off those benefits. So we know that that level, at that class, what we're doing is we have the minimum wage, we have tax relief, and we have state supports that can help those kinds of families to give them the step up that they may need. And so that's one of the things that we're sensitive about. And I want to be very clear about that. That's just one agency saying what we should do. There are other agencies telling us, if you do this, you're going to affect this tax bracket. If you do this, you're going to hurt this. If you do this, you may not get as much money. If you do this class is not going to necessarily get as much of a tax relief. So we're measuring lots and lots of things and taking into consideration a lot of different testimony from the different agencies.
It's a Rubik's Cube.
It is. It's a total Rubik's Cube.
DBED is our Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, and the legislature requires them to make a report every 2 years on what a self-sufficiency income is, just to make the basic needs. And that number of $17 an hour is for a single person with no children and who's already getting health care from their employer. And it says in their report, this is the basic needs. And I understand that there could be a loss of benefits, but we're not talking about $17 tomorrow. You know, most of the advocates who say 17 are talking about $17, 5 years from now. So again, we're not trying to shock the businesses and put them all out. We are thinking about, manageable steps, predictable steps, kind of like what we did in 2015 to 2018, where I understand you're saying that we can't prove that all the good things that happened in the economy were because of the minimum wage increase. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that none of the bad things that were predicted before the last minimum wage increase happened.
I've got a couple of graphics, or at least one I'd like to show about the impact of a $17 minimum wage and who's affected by this impact. And this is figures from the Appleseed organization. So first of all, the ages, like there's always the talk about, the people who are earning the low wages are generally younger people. So if you look at this and you say, okay, here's all the people who are making less than $17 an hour in our economy, right? So 21% of people under 16 to 24, 35%. I find it just almost incomprehensible that 35% of people between 25 and 39 are making less than $17 an hour. Is that what that number means?
Yeah, I believe it's from this report, which looks at the effects on our population if the minimum wage went up to $17 by 2025. So it's not current wages, it's a prediction of future wages. So this is how many people or what percent of people would be affected over the next 5 years.
But is it fair to say that this is a number that can give us an idea of how many people make less than $17 an hour?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's a lot. I mean, because considering the wage that a family would need to afford, a one-bedroom rental is like $27.
Yeah, $17 an hour is about $35,000 a year, which I think most people would start to think that is about where you get to for a single person to make their basic needs. I think just common sense, knowing how much it costs to live here.
Well, how would it feel for you if you made $35,000 a year?
Well, that's better.
Yeah. When you had worked at 2 or 3 jobs, did you also get any kind of benefits from the government? Did you get food stamps or anything like that?
No, because the income that I received when I worked 3 jobs, I'm not qualified for the help from the government. So even my kids, I send them to a public school, but they're gonna look at your income if how much you make to be qualified. So there's a lot of people who is not qualified for the help of the government. Okay. Unless you're not working at all, so you will be qualified.
So here's an interesting caller too. My daughter and son-in-law and 2 young kids returned home from the mainland in late 2015 and by mid-2018 decided to go back to the mainland. They couldn't make it working 80 plus and 60 plus hours a week. I was watching their kids Monday through Friday for free. They couldn't make it work financially. They were both doctors. Go figure. I mean, it was, I won't name the organization they were working for, but still, I mean, this overall feeling like, even
Everyone's
with all
underwater.
this, I think that's a very strong impression. Mm-hmm. Do folks have hope? Nicole, do you have hope?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we're so pleased that the legislature and the governor are focusing on working families this session. That's a wonderful thing for us to be thinking about and trying to find solutions. And I have hope in looking at the other states, looking at states that are leading the way, the ones that are also high cost, who are raising the wage. And, Seattle, San Francisco, New York City, they're already at $15 an hour. DC is going to follow them this year. And they've been at 15, a couple of them have been there for a couple of years. Their restaurant industries are fine, their jobs are fine, they're doing okay. So we can look at them and have confidence that we can go there with them and we can follow. There's a lot of evidence that shows that we can make it if we do that. And then workers like Israel will be able to maybe not work 3 jobs,
Sherry, are a lot of people working those multiple jobs in the companies you represent?
I'm sure, again, speaking for the small businesses, they operate on a very slim net profit. And so every cent has an impact. With that said, again, their employees are their families and they take care. This is the culture here. We take care of our employees. Many of them are very flexible, giving vacation, or if they have to take some leave, they'll grant leave. So I don't think we can label all businesses as, oh, we're just cutting hours just because we don't want to pay for it. That's not true at all. Okay. Our small businesses take care of our employees because that just promotes a healthier economy and a healthier Hawaii.
I only have about 30 seconds left. Della Bellotti, how confident are you that this package is going to hold together and you'll be able to look at the public in June or July and say we did it?
I have confidence in my colleagues that we are committed to doing something right for the workers and the working families of the state. So I think we will have to work through some difficult compromises and we're going to reach the end goal.
And Israel, last word. You getting confident yet?
I don't have the idea how confident I am.
Oh, okay. So it's not giving you a lot. You'll wait and see what happens, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Watch and see.
Okay, watch and see. Okay, we all will be. Mahalo to all of you for joining us tonight. And we thank our guest, Nicole Wu, Senior Policy Analyst for the Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice, Representative Della Bellotti, House Democratic Majority Leader, Sherry Minora McNamara, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, and Israel Kahlo, utility worker at Honolulu Airport. Was really glad to have you with us. Next week on Insights, mandatory vaccinations for Hawaii school students. The rules have changed. Please join us then. I'm Daryl Huff for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.